Yes, good morning. I'm not usually on this around this time of this, but anyways, it doesn't matter. So this is an interesting topic that I wanted to talk about. I guess first I'll give you just a book update. So my last video was Wednesday night. I was super excited, still really excited. I basically purchased my ISBN number, and you guys don't know what that is. It's like a 13-digit number that you use to like if you're online trying to look for books, that's the number it goes by. I don't know exactly. Basically, it's that number that's how you identify a book, basically. And I also bought my barcode for my book. And so that was just like a really awesome moment. And I just did it. And I was like, let me get on and tell somebody because I was so excited, right? And it's crazy because like I was exhausted. I've had a long week. That's why I'm home right now because I took off today because I had a serve safe training and I thought that training was only one day. Like it was one day this week, and then next week you go to take the test. Turned out it was a 2-day training. And so literally Tuesday and Wednesday, I was in Lynchburg, driving back and forth between Lynchburg. And then Thursday, I had to go to Martinsville. And so it was like, I've been doing a lot of driving. I've been doing a lot of, and then also like every night, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I had like either a meeting, a class, or a Bible study or something. So it's like, I've been having like really long days, and that's why I'm home right now. Not that I need to justify why I'm home, because I could go home, be home if I feel like it. But anyways, but it's just interesting how everything happens. So, but I was telling you, that's why I was telling you that. I was like, why did I just tell you all that? But so after that video, I was gonna go to bed. So I was like super tired, right? But then I had checked my email just one more time before I went to sleep or whatever, and I saw that my second edits came in. So basically, I submitted the book the first time, the first draft, and then the second they gave it back, and I had to do edits. And that first edit took me a month. It literally took me a month to do that. And so like we're coming up on the day that my contract says the book is supposed to be done by. And so I was like, okay. I saw that the second editor came in. I was like, I don't want to waste any time. I'm going to get this done. And so basically, I stayed it's like almost 3 in the morning. And I got those edits done. So literally, the first edits took me a month to do. The second edits took me like 3 hours. So I knocked those things out real quick. And so I was like, yep, nope. But anyways, but the first edits were an interesting process for me. And like the thing is, I always say this, and like there's no loss in God. And I'm basing that based off of Romans 8:28, where it says, well, just blank on that for a quick second, but all things work together for the good of those who love God. And if all things work together, that means God is going to use everything. So like every good thing that happens to, but everything good experience, but also all the bad experiences, all the bad things that happen, God's going to use everything. So I always say, and that's how I got the whole saying there's no loss in God because God's going to use everything, right? And He's going to use it for your good. And so that first edits were really difficult for me because like I was almost like I was reliving having anxiety. So guys, if you don't know, like I'm talking about the book I wrote. I have a book called Never Be Bound Again. And it's a self-directed guide to deliverance. And in that book, I talk about how I struggled with like anxiety for a really long time. And then how one night basically God met me in my kitchen and I got delivered from anxiety. And so basically giving my testimony on that, but then also giving practical steps. I'm like, okay, I went through this, I was delivered. Now this is how you can get delivered too. And so going through the edits, it was crazy because like writing the book was fine. Like I was just like I knocked that book out really quickly. Like it did not take me long. It literally might have took me 24 hours, like a legit total 24 hours to write that book. But the editing of that book was the hardest thing I've had to do with this project. And it was because I was basically reliving this emotion, that intense anxiety I used to feel, I was reliving it. And it was weird because it was just like, I've been good. Like the events that happened in the book happened maybe like, I want to say 2 years ago now. I think it happened in 2016, the end of 2016, I almost want to say. So or was it the end of 2017? It was either it was the end of, it was November of 2016. I think 2017, I was in my house at that point. So yeah, 2016. So it's been almost 3 years at this point. And like I haven't had like anxiety pretty much since then. And so like to be reliving it was really difficult. Because basically what brought it back up was just like the editor, like of course there's things that happen in the book because I lived it, I automatically knew what I was talking about. But for someone who didn't know what I was talking about, who wasn't familiar with my story, it might have been really difficult for them to follow certain points of it. And so the editor was having me to go more into detail, to do more descriptions, so many more descriptions. Like, I just assume people know what I'm talking about, I guess. And like, she was like, yeah, no, I'm kind of lost. I kind of don't, I need to visualize this. I'm trying to visualize this and I can't. And so I have to go like more into detail about the descriptions, the conversations that I had. I had to like go more into details, like the conversations, like the dialogue in the book. I had to go more into details about that. There was just all these points where I really had to like break down moments, and like basically I was reliving those moments as I was writing it. And I was having all of this like, and I was feeling all that anxiety that I was feeling basically as if it was just happening like in that moment, right? And so like, but God used that. God used editing the book to help. I don't know how to say this. Like, He used that moment basically. It'll make sense when I tell you guys what happened. So like, this was back in August, right? And in August, I went home for a wedding, and then I stayed for a couple of extra days. This was about mid-August, and like at that point, I was still in the process of editing my book. And like the thing is like when it comes to more so particularly, well, it applies to both, but particularly like inner healing. So you have deliverance and inner healing. Deliverance might just be like a let's say you have like a spirit that's like a, you know, like a bad spirit that's in you, like you're trying to get it out, you got to be delivered. But let's say there's like a wound that happens, like something like you're hurt and like someone does something and it hurts you, like, and you become bitter from it. Those type of things typically you can only like heal from through inner healing, basically. I hope this makes sense. Just follow me. We're going to get somewhere, right? And but that's the basic like difference between inner healing and deliverance. Deliverance is more so inner healing is required when something is done to you, and then that opens a door to like demonic spirits. Deliverance is you did something, more than likely. That's a rough explanation. But anyways, we'll get to that another day. But because I'm trying to get somewhere. But basically, and so, but when it comes to like inner healing and deliverance, you really have to figure out the root of whatever it is. So like, let's say for example, I don't know. I always do this when I try to say an example. I never have an example ready. But let's say for example, you have what's a good example? I promise, because lust always is the first one that comes to mind. So let's just go with it. All right, let's say you have a spirit of lust and you're trying to get rid of it. Well, you need to figure out what was the root, what initially caused that. So it might have been you were exposed to something like at an early age that you probably shouldn't have been like, paying attention to or made cognitive of. And so now you have to like deal with that root. And so like you can deal with the fruits of the lust, which might be promiscuity or like whatever. But the actual issue was that you was exposed to this thing, and so now you have to uproot that thing. This went more into like technical stuff that I want to talk about. I just want to tell y'all what happened. But anyway, so you guys are with me though. So like, anyways, and so like God used basically me going through the edits, me really having to like recall what happened, because the thing was, mind you, this stuff has happened like 3 years ago, so I literally had to stop. Like, okay, what actually happened? Like some of the questions they asked me, like, okay, what was the cause of your anxiety? And like I never really thought about that. I just know I always had it. Well, I wouldn't say I always had it, but I had it for a really long time. So I had to really wait. Like, oh wait, I don't exactly know. Like I had to stop and actually think. Like, okay, well, it started around this age. So then, what happened around this age that caused this thing, right? And so, basically, what I realized was that the root of my anxiety came from well, at least a good portion of it, because I had like anxiety in different areas, but like one of the roots of it came from the fact that somebody who was influential in my life, and I'm not talking like a fan, like not my mom or dad, sister, nobody like that. So don't like troll my parents or nothing like that. But like someone who's really influential in my life was very critical. And it wasn't necessarily always directed towards me. Most of the time, it wasn't directed towards me. It was probably, particularly when I was younger, it was probably never really directed towards me. but I was around them and I would hear how critical they were. So they would always talk about someone else. They always look down on other people. They were always saying something about somebody else. And so, like, what would happen was I got in my mind that, like, yo, they're talking about these people. And these are literally, it could literally be somebody walking down the street and they'll have something to say about it. Like, don't know the person, don't know anything about them, just like, and but will say something critical or like anything that happened, like in the news, in our community, whatever, there was always something negative that they said about it. And so, like, the thing was, is like, if you say this about these strangers, or like, or this is how you talk about people, like, I don't want you to ever talk about me in that way. And so, what happened was, I became like very much. So that was like kind of the root of it. And so, like, people used to tell me all the time, like, oh, Elaine, you're a perfectionist, because I wanted to make sure everything was always right. But the thing is that, like, no, I wasn't a perfectionist. I was just really afraid of being criticized. And so because I didn't want to be criticized, I made sure everything was in order. I made sure everything was right or whatever. But then that is what then brought on the anxiety, because of the fact that I was always worried, like, okay, is this right? Is this how it's supposed to be? Am I being presented in the best possible way? Like, a whole list of things that I'm out trying to check off, like making sure that everything's always right. And it wasn't from like being a perfectionist. It was being more for the fear of criticism. And so when I talk about like having to understand the root of something, because the thing was, had I listened to other people and been like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, I would have been trying to uproot perfectionism. I would have been trying to like make sure that was the thing that I wasn't like struggling with, or like still had a hold on me or whatever, not realizing it was the fact that I was afraid of being criticized. And like, while the fruit of those two things are the same, the root is different. And so, like, when you're going through inner healing, when you're going through deliverance, you have to make sure you recognize exactly what the root is, because if not, you could be chopping down the wrong tree, and you won't see progress in that area, and you'll be trying to figure out, okay, what happened? Like, I prayed for this thing, I fasted from this thing, I did all this stuff, and like, I'm still in the same state. It's because you're bound by something that you misdiagnosed. And so I just wanted to like just throw aside, and like, you have to be careful about those things. Like, you have to make sure you have the right diagnosis when you're going through inner healing, when you're going to deliverance, when you're really trying to break down these things that might have you down, because if not, you'll still be bound. And you'll be going through deliverance, you'll be having other people pray for you, you'll be doing all this stuff, and it won't work, But the thing was, okay, but anyways, so that's basically the root of all of this, like where that basically stemmed from, and it pretty much primarily stemmed from this one particular person or whatever. And so when I went home for that couple of days for the wedding, for those couple of days, I always try to make sure I see as many people as possible. And this is a person that's still, a part of my life, still like complete. I have love for this person. Like, everything's cool. Like, it's not like any animosity or anything against this person. Like, no, things are great. And this is why I say in the title, I was gonna say that first, but I forgot. A person who bended you. So this person, like, they didn't break me. I'm not broken. First of all, I'm not broken. What they did wasn't like damaging, because like, I didn't want to make it seem like, oh, this is advice for someone who like had someone to do something like really harmful or traumatic. This is not on that level. This is something that someone did something to you, and it did have an effect on you. It's recognizing that people have an effect on you and have had an effect on how you are now, how you operate today, is based off what other people did to you as a child. And that's just the honest truth of it all. And so the thing is, it's like, we have those effects on people, have those effects on us, and like we have that effect on other people. So literally, it's not necessarily that person like destroyed you, ruined your future, anything like that, but they did have an effect on you. And like, I literally was operating in and I had all this anxiety, and that was the root. And there was a person who I can attribute to this to. It's not that I have any love lost for this person. It's not that I hate this person, that I'm angry with this person, nothing like that. No, it's just the fact that I'm mad. And it's one of those things that happen. And so I was telling the person, we were just like hanging out or whatever, and I was telling the person about the book, because they know about the book or whatever, and they were trying to understand, okay, well, why did you have anxiety? And this is not like a strange question or whatever. When I start talking about the book, like, those are questions I expect to get, because like, people want to know. People just want to know like more about the book and everything like that. And so the thing was, it was like, God brought me to the realization of the root of it and how this person attributed to this. And so I was like, it was a really difficult conversation for me. Probably not for them. I don't think they even really noticed, like, I was struggling with the conversation or not. But it was a difficult conversation because I didn't want to tell this person, you're the reason why I had anxiety. You're the reason why all of this happened. Like, I didn't want to do that. That's not cool, right? But I was still trying to, like, say it, like, in a way that they kind of understood, these things happen, these events took place, and this is how it affected me. And so when I talk about just like the whole title, just saying addressing the person, like one of the things that really helped in this situation, one was that I had already forgiven them. Like I wasn't holding on to unforgiveness. And I think like if you're looking for a way to have difficult conversations with people who have negatively affect you, the first thing is just you have to go in there already forgiving the person. Like the person has already been forgiven. And it's not for them, it's for you. Like God, the Bible says that, if we can't forgive our brother, God can't forgive us. And so like the thing is that you have to make sure that you forgive people when they do you wrong, when there's an offense. Like just forgive them. Like, and it's not for them, it's for you, literally for you. And so like that made me having already forgiven them. Like they didn't owe me anything. They didn't owe me an apology. I wasn't looking for an apology. I wasn't looking for validation. I wasn't looking for anything. It was just this was the conversation that happened just because we started talking about the book. And so the conversation was easier to be had because of the fact that I already forgiven them. I wasn't holding anything against them. I didn't have a grudge or anything like that. So like if you're having to have a conversation like this, like it's so important to already have forgiven them, because if I was still holding on to bitterness, if I was still upset, if I was like blaming them for all this stuff, like that would have been a completely different conversation. It would have been a very difficult conversation. But this is still somebody that I love. Like this is somebody I still care about, And so like I was telling them, and I was kind of beating around the bush, and they kept pressing. And so then I didn't direct, like, how did I say it? It was more so like me kind of explaining how it all came about. And I basically was like, like growing up, you were really critical. Like you still are very critical. And like I never wanted you or anyone else to talk about me the way that I hear you guys like talking about other people. And that basically was like honest with them though. Like I didn't specifically say you're the reason why I have anxiety, but I did break it down to the point where it's like this happened, this is the result. And so from there they were able to like put in the pieces. Like if you want to be direct with the person, go right ahead. I couldn't be super direct with that person in that moment. I just couldn't do it. But I was able to be direct enough to a point where they understood what I was talking about without me having to actually be like pointing fingers at the person, right? And so when in that conversation, and if you have one of these type of conversations, I think another thing that's really important is like the person doesn't owe you anything. That person doesn't owe you an apology. And it's actually funny because that's what I was going to title this video at first. I've been sitting on this for a while. Like I told you guys Wednesday, I was going to talk about, I had something to talk about. But I've been sitting on this for a while, basically. And at first I was going to title the video, accepting the apology you didn't get. But that didn't quite feel right. But that is something that you kind of gotta accept. That you might not get an apology. They might not see anything wrong with any of the actions that they did. And they may, you might not get an apology. And that's okay. Like, when you're having difficult conversations like this, it's almost better to go in not expecting anything. Like, I feel like you kind of, like, shield yourself a little bit from hurt. If you go in expecting an apology and you don't get it, like, I've been in situations where like I feel like you owe me an apology, and the person was like, nah, I don't. And like I'm then left to having, because it's hard to forgive somebody when they literally say, oh, I don't feel like I do owe you an apology. It makes it more difficult. So it's almost more helpful to just like go into the situation like you don't owe me anything, and that's cool. And like to be, because I feel like you get a cleaner break in that way. Like you're not holding on to anything else. But anyways, and so but I basically told them what, basically like these things happen, and as a result, I got anxiety. Like that's basically what happened. And then the conversation kind of shifted a little bit. So at first it was like, well, I just don't understand. Like I don't get this. Like why? But then they started talking about how they grew up and how their siblings or whoever like influential in their life kind of held them to extremely high standards, that there wasn't much room for like mistakes, how like they're like people who had influence over their lives was basically held them to a really high standard, and how they basically didn't have the option to like not be successful, to not succeed, to not always be like the best that they could possibly be. And in that, that's where I heard it. It was like, okay, what has happened was that you experienced that criticism, and it wasn't that that the people around their lives were criticizing them. It was more so that they really pushed them to be the best, and in that they were then like, it kind of made them more aware of what was happening around them and made them more critical of a person. So like if you're always analyzing something, and this is something that I have to watch myself, like I naturally analyze everything. I'm just always looking at things, and I'm always like tuned into very detailed, just the details of things. And so in my always analyzing of other things, it can easily turn to criticism, because then it's like, because they're really coming from the same kind of place. What's happening if you're criticizing somebody, you're really focusing in on very small details, really. And I feel like that's what kind of happened to them. That person, they basically were in a situation where they always had to perform, and they always had to be, the best or whatever. And so then they grew that whole like, now, because I wouldn't even want to say necessarily that they were criticized a lot. They was held to a really high standard. And when you have a really high standard, sometimes when things don't meet that standard, you call it out. But then that's where the criticism part comes in. I think the more effective way of it is just like kind of being more on the analytical side, where you're basically helping the person, or the other thing, helping the situation out. But if you're not operating, the best way this is how I can explain it. So we took a Strengths Finder test at my job, and the way they kind of explain each characteristic, and they basically tell you what characteristics that you have. They kind of rank them. But for every characterization, what's the word I'm trying to say? I'm thinking about criticism. Every character trait that you have, you can basically, there's a good way of looking at it and a bad way, basically. So you can operate in your balcony, which is you operating at the best it could possibly be, but you can also operate in your basement, which is like, that's the kind of negative spin to it. So for example, one of mine is like a collector, which is very random. And so the operating at the, and basically that means you collect things. It could be actual physical things, or it could be information. And for me, it's more so information. So I like to learn a lot. Like, I'm big on fun facts. I love a good fun fact. And so I will have a whole bunch of fun facts, and I'm just like ready to go at no moment's notice. All right. And so the balcony of that is that you always have something interesting to add to conversations. You're always learning. You're always seeking new information. The basement of that is you might be a hoarder. You might be so like specific to certain things. So the things that you collect be so niche that no one else cares about it, but you're really stuck on it. And so you can kind of like it might be hard for you to move on. It might be hard for change because you collected all these particular things, particularly like conversations. It might be difficult for you to like, because then you want to share it. So, and like, you might have a hard time recognizing that not everybody cares about things, that specific thing, as much as you do. But like the hoarding part of it also kind of shows you the basement of that. So this whole concept also applies to that situation where basically for the person, they took having to always be the best and like that strive for the best, and that what their people of influence was telling them. And then they kind of turned it into the point where they were, instead of always looking for opportunities to be better or to do their best, basically, they started looking down upon other people. And that's where the criticism part came in. And so that was a lot. That was a whole lot for this video. I didn't necessarily want to go that deep into it, but I hope you guys want to get something out of this. But basically what I'm trying to say is I had to talk to the person who was the root of my anxiety. And in that conversation, I learned how they became the person they are. Because the thing was, again, there was another person who quote unquote bended them, who had an influence on them that made them who they are now, the way they are now. And it wasn't necessarily a positive influence. Like I would definitely say that they negatively affected them, even though that wasn't their intention. There's never the intent of. I feel like if you have people in your lives who may cause you to bend, basically their intent usually isn't to be negative or to have a negative effect on you, but that just so happens to be the result of it. And so basically when you're having those conversations, like if you have the opportunity to have it and you decide you want to take it, my advice to you guys is just to extend forgiveness ahead of time. Like just let it up. Like you have to extend that forgiveness for yourself and go into the conversation knowing that you probably won't get an apology, and that's okay, but you don't. But allow God to move in that situation. Because I wasn't after an apology, because I wasn't trying to make that person feel bad for making me feel a certain way, making me be a certain way, I learned where the root of theirs came from. And that's insight that I never would have ever probably gotten had that conversation went any other type of way. It's also information like I just didn't know in general. Like I've heard about their upbringing or whatever, but I didn't put all those things together in that way. Like, oh, you're very critical because you were held to a really high standard and people were always looking highly upon you and they put you on this pedestal. And so now you're doing the same to other people, but the way you're doing it has a turn to it where it basically looks like you're just criticizing everything. And so then the last one, the advice that I kind of had was just to extend grace, to extend mercy, and to extend love. Like I feel like, because the thing is, like that person, just like in my actual situation, it's almost like a domino effect. Well, one person affected the next person, who that person didn't affect me. They might be just a part in this whole domino effect where someone else did something to them. So you never know the root of their stuff, And so, like, I think if you're able to extend mercy, if you're able to extend grace, like, look, they did the best they could with what they had, and this is how they are now, and this is why they operate in that way now. And you may not get that story. You may not get the reasoning why someone's the way they are. You may never hear about it. Like, you might not get it, but know that there is possibly a reason. And be okay with not knowing. And that sucks. And, like, that's hard to swallow. You may never know, which is why extending forgiveness ahead of time is, like, the key part of it. So yeah, that was a difficult month, basically trying to edit the book, but then also going through this where it's like, oh, I understand now. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just want to encourage you guys though. I feel like we all have our things. I feel like we all have had people negatively influence us in some form or fashion. And I think you just have to extend that forgiveness and keep it pushing. You got to. Because the thing is, there's so much for us to do. There's so much work for us to be done. There's so much kingdom work that we have to do that we can't allow offense to set in. That's what someone told me that over the summer, which is a random. By the way, it was a person I didn't even know. It was a complete stranger. It was God speaking through them, But to not allow offense to set in, even when people do you wrong, even when you deserve to be offended, trying to and the thing is when you say don't let offense set in, you can be offended. It's not saying, oh, you can't feel anything, you can't be mad. Even the Bible says, be angry but do not sin. So the thing is, it's you can have those feelings, but then don't let it to set in. Because the thing is, offense, anger, all that kind of stuff, it just turns into bitterness. And that's a horrible root. That is a horrible root. Bitterness leads to so many other different things that you don't even want to get trapped up in. So don't let that offense set in. Basically says don't become bitter from it. It's okay to be upset about something. It's okay to be angry about something, but then process those feelings and then forgive. Extend forgiveness. Whew, this was a lot. I didn't necessarily want this to be a 30-minute video. That was not my plan. But I hope you guys got something from it. And I hope in my rambling on that it makes sense. That's my hope. And I hope that it's something that you guys can actually get something from. But yeah, it was a difficult conversation, but I had it. And I'm in a better place now. And I have a place of understanding because of it. And so, yeah, I hope if you had to deal with other people who possibly negatively affected you, or you're in a similar situation, or you haven't had the opportunity to address them, but you want to, or anything related to this, I hope that you can use my words, to use my story, to use my testimony in this moment to then be able to have those conversations. Because the thing is, it was a difficult conversation because the whole time I was sitting there praying, like, God, please don't make me tell this person that there's a reason for this. That was literally my prayer. And God gave me the words to say what I had to say. Because it was important for me to be honest and open in that moment, because it was about me healing as well. And I feel like if you try to spare people's feelings too much, you then sacrifice your own. And you sacrifice your own healing and your own growth. And so I never want to be like, oh, don't confront people. And that's why I was really particular about saying addressing, because I didn't want it to sound like, oh, it was a confrontation. It was just like, I'm addressing this, though. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to have a negative spin on it or anything. I think there's a lot of healing that can take place just from being open and honest and saying, this is what happened and this is how this affected me. But I'm good now, but this did have an effect on me. I don't think you should deprive yourself of that moment. So yeah, I just hope that you guys are encouraged. I hope you guys are encouraged to have difficult conversations. And I hope you have now just the knowledge of how to go about it. Even if it's those couple of steps ahead, which was basically extend forgiveness. I have it right here, that's what I'm looking at. But extend forgiveness. Don't go in expecting anything from the other person, and basically extend grace. And I hope those help you. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.